Yeah, so I have a little bit of
I want to hear more about this. What's the brief on why I hate everyone
a
else?
little bit of rage, a little bit, even though I usually play pretty chill characters in D&D.
Yeah.
But a friend of ours, Jonathan, always says him and I need to start our own podcast that's called "Let Me Tell You Why I Hate People." And then
So do
each
you main
episode,
barbarians? Are you maining barbarians? Or are you like maining a bards all the time and just like,
I'm usually a druid, and like I talk to animals, and that's
Loves everything.
I
loves
mean,
everything.
if your preference is to talk to animals and you can turn into like a giant bear, I mean that is sort of that tracks with the I
Yeah,
hate
I
other
guess.
people. I
I
mean
mean,
you
Yeah.
absolutely could like play the druid as like no, I want nothing to do with
yeah, like in our
you
current campaign, I uh I wild shape into a giant ape, and I throw
nice.
rocks at people and I punch people with my fists. So I guess the rage comes out. It just might be a little more passive aggressive in a way. At being a druid, you
Yeah,
think
yeah.
it's really yeah. So that's our podcast. I mean, if you're interested,
Nice.
if you know do a side project.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm a rogue main, so I mostly
Okay.
do rogues, and so like my favorite character of the past few years that I've retired, but was an arcane trickster, where I was an
Mhm.
elf who spent all my time in makeup as a looking like a human, so that I could like if I needed to disguise myself, I would just strip all the makeup off. I was like a stage magician, so I
Oh.
always looked like a stage magician with a top hat, and then I would like strip the makeup off without like prestidigitation the makeup off, and then I would be back to looking like an elf. So I was always like it was just, and then my poor DM at some point like rather gave me a rod of absorption, and I was like, oh, so you're now giving an arcane trickster like unlimited spell slots because I can't cast anything higher than like third level. So it's just fog clouds from here on out, and they all look like freaking like theatrical smoke bombs. Every time they go off, it's just big colored smoke bombs going off and
Awesome.
stage explosions. Yeah, it was. I was a terror in that campaign. I try to torture my DMs.
I
Don't
think
most
that's
players want to
yeah,
torture their DM
yeah.
though?
Yeah, I'm like I won't say torture, but I'm absolutely that guy who's like, okay, there's the way to solve the problem, and then there's a totally different way to solve the problem, and I want to solve it the other way. I'm not at all interested in like if it's like, oh, very clear that I'm supposed to go talk to this person and they're going to give me the quest and I'm going to go do the thing. I'm going to be like, I'm not talking. I'm going to just go find the quest. I'm not going to, or I'm like, oh, you've got some, I'm going to make me talk to as some random NPC that I'm going to just be like, or like at one point we had to end a session because we were trying to like rescue somebody or something, but I like dropped into like a room filled with like drow priestesses, and I was like, and I just like I just told the DM, I'm like, I'm jumping in, and everybody else in the party's like, wait, what? I'm like, I gotta try and rescue this
Yeah.
person. And I would just like, and it was just, that whole character is just like straight up, he's a rogue, so like if I hit somebody, I'm gonna hurt him.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, and I'm just like, and super high mobility. So I'm just like
Uh-huh.
leaping around and jumping around, stabbing somebody, and then like casting fog cloud, this, that. My DM just like,
That's
if I
awesome.
get the DM like spinning in circles,
Hmm.
then I have a chance to survive. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Thank you for the hours of preparation, but I'm going to do the other thing.
Yeah, but yeah, exactly. I
We
DM a lot too, so I really
Okay.
appreciate players who can like challenge me on that side of it too.
we kind of threw Jonathan off last night. We recorded an episode of our Novemir anthology, and he had a whole plan, and we kind of did it the opposite of what
Oh,
he
nice.
wanted.
Started
But
at the end and came
yeah,
back to the
pretty
to the
much,
beginning.
pretty much, pretty
Which
much.
is fine.
Yeah.
I enjoy making the story, but then when your characters do the other thing, I think as a
Yeah.
DM, you know that's going to happen more than not. So you just go, okay,
Yeah.
we'll go this way.
Yeah, it's I love the world building part of the DMing, like the just sort of building all that stuff. I was thinking recently I need to work on my NPCs. I feel like some of my NPCs are not as compelling as, but I like the party, my usual crowd that I play with, there's like 6 people, so it's just like a really big party. It's hard to manage all that and encounters and then also try to like I can do like compelling villains, but I don't necessarily do like the compelling secondary NPCs that they're like fully bought into. Some of it is like the players that I have are like a little less interested in like really engaging with NPCs, but that might be me. I don't know. It's just being a DM, man. It's an interesting, yeah, it's
It's a hard
interesting.
job.
It's fun.
Well, why don't
Yeah.
I mean, we keep chatting, but let's
Yeah.
introduce everyone to our guest today, and welcome to another episode of The Parking Lot. I am Sarah, and we have Jonathan, and we have Andy from DodecaDonuts. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you. That's me, Andy.
That's you.
DodecaDonuts, 100% real, totally fake donuts
100%.
for your dice.
I have mine right here. I have the chocolate.
Nice.
It's my favorite.
I love how people like. I love the donuts, but as much as I love the donuts, I really love the fact that people love them so much. Like, it's so much fun to talk to people who are like bought a donut like 3 years ago and are still like excited to tell me about the donut and excited to tell me how much they love it. And I'm like, it's just, yeah.
I tell everyone about these donuts. I think like I found you on Instagram, and then we were going to PAX East March 2024, I think it was, and I connected with you, and I'm like, I have to go to this booth. I have to find Andy. I have to find these donuts, and I bought some stickers, and you and I chatted for a few minutes, and then the donuts were all sold out, and I think I had to be on a wait list for like several months, and I kept checking like refresh. Are there donuts? Are there donuts?
It's so brutal. I get so many people asking me like we're doing Phoenix Fan Fusion in like a week, and then we're doing Origins later in the month, and so I have to pull all the donuts that I have in stock off the website, and then I immediately get people like asking me, when are you going to restock? I'm like, I make these things as fast as I possibly can, and I'm really sorry. Sometimes it just takes a little while to
they're beautiful. They're beautiful. And I think when I first saw them, you didn't have as many options for like the glaze, and now you have like the really new cool like more geometric ones. And you have bagels too. Do you still do the bagels?
We still do the bagels. So we have the Dodeca donut, the original Dodeca donut, it's like a wooden, for our listeners who have never seen a Dodeca donut, and why would you have? It's a wooden body, and then it has like essentially a resin top that gets glued on top of it, and that all gets painted. And they look, I would say, from like 5 or 6 feet away, like when you've got a pile of them, they just look like really, really perfect donuts. It's not until you get kind of up close to them that they're sort of surprising, and you realize that they split open. They're kind of sliced horizontally like a bagel. But we had a few people who would give me a hard time when I was making them early. They're like, well, that just looks like a bagel. And I'd be like, oh, you want bagels? So I'm going to make bagels. So sometimes what we'll do is we won't put the frosting on. We'll just take the core wooden part, and we'll decorate the top with everything it's beads. It's like seed beads that look like bagels.
It does look like bagels.
And they're very funny. They do look, they look like bagels. This stuff looks, at a glance, we get a lot of people who, like, especially early on when people were less aware of who we were, like we get a lot of people who would walk up to the booth, and they'd be like, oh man, I thought these were going to be like real edible donuts, which is where the whole 100% real, totally fake line came from. It's just like I was like, oh, we spend all our time at the booth answering questions about the donuts, and it's like you just end up with like
they do look like
patter to like sell the donuts. It's pretty funny.
They look
so
freshly glazed.
You don't sell donuts. You should partner with someone and have actual donuts to sell.
So it's very funny. So my background is as a creative director, doing like branding and all this other sort of stuff, and I have, because we've had people come up and be like, oh, you should sell real donuts, or you should sell real coffee, because we sell like fake coffee bags to hold your dice. And there's part of me that just really there's one.
You got a fan.
Sarah is a big fan.
That's why I had to have you on our podcast.
Yeah. There's part of me that's like, the brand promise to some degree is that it is sort of real fake stuff, that it's a thing that's not what you expect it to be. So there's part of me that's like, oh, if I sell real donuts, I'm not sure, am I breaking my brand promise? I will say that inevitably get people who walk up to the booth and are like, oh my gosh, this booth smells like donuts. And we're like, it doesn't. It's totally in your head. There's nothing here that smells like donuts. And they'll just be like, no, 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 for sure. And like the first year we were at PAX East, there was like a churro stand like across the hall from where we were. And so you kind of like, at some point I was like, you guys are smelling churros from the stand over there. You just have to go get a churro and then come back. And yeah.
You're not
so I don't know.
pumping out the smell like Disney does when you walk.
Oh my
in the
gosh,
park?
we've thought about it. We've thought about it. And then lately I was thinking, I was like, oh, what would be like the ultimate booth for DodecaDonuts? And I was like, oh, if I could get like a DodecaDonuts food truck that I could just like pull onto the, I could just pull onto the floor and like park on the floor and then just be like serving donuts out of this stupid food truck. I was
That
like,
would be awesome.
that would be nuts.
That'd be...
So yeah, so you know, brand aspirations. At some point, I'll have a fake food truck I can stick in the middle of.
I love that. Like just I
just
cannot
rock
wait.
up with like a 15-foot long or 20-foot long like straight up food truck that just has like displays on the side of like, what kind of donut do you want? And it's all just like Lexan displays that you could like pick the donut and then just somebody in the back pulls it out and gets it for you. That is a long way away.
Like
you
donut.
come to the window, you order your donut, and then you pick it up at the.
And you wait online, and someone calls your number.
Yeah, you wait online until somebody called. You know, the whole. You just have to like make the whole. The whole. You'd have to like really like figure out the whole experience. It would, and you talk about confusion because there would be people who would be like, oh, I want like an actual glazed donut. I'd be like, sorry, we're all out of regular donuts. We've got real fake donuts.
PAX East does have some food trucks inside the
arena.
Yeah.
That's
floor. So it would totally. You could get some like AstroTurf, set up some tables.
Did you see? Did you see PAX East? Were you at PAX East this year?
No, we weren't.
Okay, so PAX East this year, there was another. It's some like NFT company that's now turned their NFT into like it's like Goblin NFTs, and they've turned their NFTs into like a video game. Which is like the most real thing I've ever heard. I'm not a big fan of NFTs, but like they have turned them in, and they had like a big truck that had been like decorated as like one of the trucks out of the game. And that's kind of what had me in my head, but they literally had to have that thing. There's no engine in it. It had to be like towed and put up on blocks in the stand. Like I saw them setting it up, and they were like, they had to like put it all on, take all the wheels off, like mount the thing up in the air, and then put the wheels back on, because I think it can't be an actual vehicle on the floor. But yeah, like I said, aspirations. At some point, maybe I'll make like a big fake looking food truck booth thing. So
I think that'd be really awesome.
Yeah, it would be pretty insane. But yeah, that is far in the future when the donuts are making a little more money. But that's the dream.
So you said you had a background in branding and everything, right? But like, how did you get into woodworking? Was that just always, was that a hobby?
Oh my gosh, how did I get into woodworking? So my father, we had like a table saw and a bunch of like tools growing up, and like my grandfather had done like little woodworking projects, and my dad my father was also an artist, and for a number of years he started a company and ran it called vintagecoffins.com. Don't be caught dead without one, where he made custom coffins for artists and different people. So he made a coffin. He made like an oak coffin that he drew Santas on the side for a guy who was a professional Santa. He made like a coffin for Maxim magazine once that they wanted on the cover, where it looked like a big bottle of beer. I mean, it like crazy stuff. So he, super creative guy. And I had always been interested in woodworking all through high school. When I moved out to California and we had gotten our first house, like I bought a table saw and I would do like projects, and I was always building stuff. And then in 2018, I had gotten like a little hobby level CNC machine, and that's like a computer controlled router. It lets you do kind of repeatable shapes and stuff. And I had also about that time I'd gotten back into D&D after not playing it for a long time because of Critical Role, and I was starting to listen. I was like watching Critical Role, and I was like listening to Campaign 2 as it started up, and something about the Jester was talking about pastries, and at the same time I was thinking about making I was like, I don't want to just, I'm going to make a dice vault for myself. Like I'd made a couple dice trays, and I was like, I want to make a dice vault for myself, but I was like, but I'm too extra. I can't just make like a hexagonal one like everybody else is making. I want to make something different. Well, what would that be that would be relatively easy to make? And it just sort of popped into my head, like the basic way that I might be able to make like a donut kind of shape. And so I thought of that, and I was like, oh, that'd be pretty funny. And then I thought of the name, and I was like, oh, DodecaDonuts is a really good name. And so I because this is the kind of person that I am, I immediately went, before I even made the donut, I immediately registered the website, got the Instagram handle.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Got the Twitter handle,
It's that brain of branding.
Did all this, I'm like, if I'm going to do this and it's going to be a thing, I might at some point want to do something with it. That's pretty funny. I'm just going to grab that. So I grabbed that, and then I made the first one, and it turned out pretty good for what I wanted. At the time, I was like hand carving the frosting. I wasn't doing it as a separate thing. So I was like, using a Dremel and doing all it was kind of extra. So made one, and it turned out pretty good. And I was like, well, if you have one donut, you need a dozen donuts. So I made a dozen donuts. And then when you have a dozen donuts, you're like, well, what the hell am I going to do with a dozen wooden donuts? I should try selling these. And so we have a game convention out here on the West Coast in the Bay Area called KublaCon, which is a great show. I highly recommend anybody who's listening, if you happen to be on the West Coast and you get a chance to go to a KublaCon, they're now running, like they do a KublaCon Memorial Day weekend, they do a KublaCon fall, they have a cruise. Oh, wow. Like it is a really fun show, and there's lots of opportunities to play, and it's like very family oriented. So I emailed them and was able to get like a half table. And so I made like, I went to a geek, I made like a little display, like a primitive version of the display I have now with some like plexiglass shelves. So it looked like a little donut display. I thought that would be pretty funny. So I made that. And I sat behind a table for, 3 days and talked to people about the donuts. And I ended up selling maybe half of them, but like, it was enough for me to go like, oh, there's something there. And I enjoyed, and frankly, you guys go to conventions, I'm sure. Like, I don't know if and you guys go to conventions now as content creators, which is like a different experience than just going as a regular attendee.
Right.
Going as a vendor is a totally different experience, which I really enjoy. Like, just setting aside everything else like that, experiencing conventions as a vendor really appeals to me, because I like talking to people about their business. I like talking to people at a different level than just like, oh, your product's cool. And like, so there's sort of a relatively superficial engagement that you sometimes have with vendors as a consumer. And it's like much different on a peer-to-peer level. So, and tell me if any of this gets boring at all. And we can
No, not at all. Not at all.
Because now I'm like business nerd brain. So, so I just really I found that I really liked being a vendor and having those sorts of, and meeting people and being able to relate to them and like helping people, right? I enjoy like talking to people about what I'm doing and getting their assistance, and then talking to people about their thing, and like, is there a way I can help, or what have I learned, especially now that I've been doing it for a while. So did that at KublaCon, and then started selling them on Etsy for, I probably spent the next 4 or 5 years. I'd put them on Etsy, I'd put them up on, sell them for a while, and just slowly like getting better at making them a little more efficiently, having bigger and bigger stocks. And like, I was also working full time while all this is going on. So sometimes I would just not be doing anything with it. And then in 2023, I went to KublaCon, and at about the same time, I'm a freelancer now. So I had been working full time. I started freelancing. And I found that like this would have been like right after COVID had everything had kind of opened up after COVID. And so I went back to KublaCon, had a great show. and like all these events that I'm doing at KublaCon, I'm like adding products, right? So like part of that was adding the coffee cup dice towers, and we're like, oh, and then we should do t-shirts, and if we got t-shirts, we should have stickers. And so
pins
like stickers and pins, and like, like kind of just taking my time thinking through what DodecaDonuts could be as a brand beyond just the product, right? And then so we did KublaCon, had a really good show at the same time that like some of my other work was kind of drying up, and at the time I was like, oh, I'm in a moment here career-wise where I could either put my energy into finding more freelance work, which was less and less satisfying in some ways, or I could like kind of put it behind this personal project and see where it could go. So I made like, because again, I made a little sales sheet and I sent it out to a few different shows and started applying to a bunch of different shows kind of in early June, and got very lucky, frankly, very lucky. Like Chris from Reed Pop, who is like sort of does a lot of the tabletop exhibitor stuff for PAX and now from ECC, great guy, saw my sales sheet and basically was like, oh, this is something different than the nice thing about the donuts is they don't look like, nobody else is dumb enough to say like, oh, pastry and RPGs need to be together, and I'm going to figure out how to weld these things together, and I'm like, go all in on this niche, right? And he looked at that and saw something there, and he was like, oh, I need you to come to PAX West. So he gave me a ton of like advice, so I signed up for PAX West, and that first PAX West in 2023, like so much more successful than like I went into it with like, oh, if I do, somewhere in like, if I sell, I don't know, $9,000 worth of stuff, I would have been excited. I basically sold out. I sold every donut I had. I came back with like 4 donuts that were basically there. They were just these crazy experiments that I never expected anybody to buy them. I made like a frosted donut that basically looked like that felt like sandpaper. Like, I was really like experimenting with a bunch of stuff and met people from Kickstarter. I had Jerry Holkins bought a donut. Jasmine Billar bought a donut. Like, I met a bunch of just met a ton of people. They all got super excited about it. And a great guy, kind of more of an industry guy, this guy, Russ Thompson, bought a donut like the first day and then took it to the live show and was showing it off to everybody at the live show.
Wow.
And so like the next morning, like I just was like, and I was just like mobbed the whole time, but I met so many just super cool people, and it really like it made me realize like, oh, I really have like a chance here. And I'd also signed up for Big Bad Con.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys know? I don't know if you guys are familiar with Big Bad Con. I think they might be done, which is a real shame. They were an industry focused convention, also on the West Coast, same venue as KublaCon, but they got because it was industry focused, and it was really the intent of the convention was to provide an opportunity for people of color and underrepresented groups to get into the gaming industry. Mm-hmm. So they had a real focus. They would invite creators from all over the place. They had scholarships to get them to the show. And so that first year that we did Big Bad Con, Matt Mercer was there along with a bunch of other people from Critical Role. So I met a few people from Critical Role, and Matt Mercer bought one of the donuts right before their London live show with Jester. So then I got to watch like a month later, I got to like go to the movie theater and watch Laura Bailey have one of my donuts on stage. Yeah. So like,
I was going to ask you about that too.
Yeah. So like, I'm like, at that point, I'm like, holy crap. Like there is absolutely something here. I just have to figure out how to take advantage of it. So, spent the rest of the year basically. So that was like September, spent like October, November, December figuring out, I had to redesign the donuts a little bit to make them a little easier to produce, but like committed to that. And then we did a Kickstarter at the beginning of the year in 2024 that did really successful. We pre-sold like 100
Mm-hmm.
donuts, 150 donuts or something like that. And then, we did like 9 shows last year, including all the PAX events. We did Big Bad Con again. We did KublaCon. We did a couple of other, like DunderCon, which is a long-running but smaller show in the Bay Area. And kind of just experimented with a bunch of stuff. Figured out a little bit more about like what shows work for us, and now we're and spent basically did pretty well for a new what I would consider like a new business. A lot of travel, but we made it through 2024, and I think it was generally a pretty successful year. And now this year we're trying to we learned a lot, right? Like the donuts are very expensive for a lot of people, so it's like we're trying to figure out we've designed these we did a Kickstarter for some one shots earlier in the year. We're doing a Kickstarter now for a card game. My son is an aspiring game designer and very smart about that stuff, so he's designed a card game that my daughter, who's an illustrator, did all the illustrations for, and I did all the graphic design. So that's running right now. Anybody who's listening, go to search Fantasy Food Fight on Kickstarter. You can learn all about it.
Yeah.
You can watch a very silly video of me being assaulted by my children with
is that who did it?
cream pies.
I was wondering where all the pies came.
Yes. That was yes. They were very excited to help me out with the video when I told them you get to throw food at me the whole time.
They're getting back at you for various things over the years, possibly.
Yeah. So so we're doing that, and then once that Kickstarter wraps up, which will hopefully be by the end of this year, early next year, we'll be doing. We designed like essentially like a low res version of the donuts, which is, it's very important for me that I don't want to just make a plastic donut that happens to hold dice. Like I want something that feels special, and I love like the whole art vinyl toy thing. So we're going to do essentially like a plastic version of the donuts, but it looks like a low res donut. And we took the first prototypes, we took those to PAX East this year and posted a few things online about them, and got a really, really positive response. So we're starting to try to figure out. They're super. I mean, I've got, you guys can see them. They're in the same way that like the donuts are the regular donuts are really interesting, especially on camera. They're very glittery, very pretty. These are also pretty and unusual, but in like a totally different way.
I might need to get in on that one.
Yeah, and so like that's
add to my collection.
The hope is that they are a little bit more of like, I want them to be more. I want them to be accessible. Like that's like probably the number one question or response we get from people. You get a lot of younger people who really love the donuts and would love to be able to buy one, but they are expensive.
Yeah.
And so they sit there and go like, oh, that's just out of my budget. And so to have something that that is also still really cool, and that they can get and have a donut, and it's, that doesn't necessarily compete so much with, what I don't want to do is like scavenge. I don't want to reduce the value of the handmade, handcrafted donut by making something that's identical but plastic.
Yeah.
I want to make two different things. It's, I think it's important for me that everything feels and is artistic and clever and creative and feels and is quality. Whether that's a sticker that we've designed or anything else. Like, I want the whole arc of all the products from the least expensive thing to the most expensive thing to feel like they're handcrafted and clever and fun and interesting, that people get a sense of joy from engaging with their stuff and the brand, so.
I do. And your booth is a lot of fun. And you were talking about how when you go to these shows, seeing it from your perspective is a little bit different than just a guest, or if Legends of the Tabletop were to attend. But overall, one of the things that we enjoyed about your booth, I had never met you in person. We'd only met through Instagram and had little chats.
Yeah.
But we came up to the booth, introduced ourselves. You were showing us things, and we bought stickers, and it was just so much fun. And everyone at your booth was just awesome to be around. And that's that incredible energy that we always talk about that is in this niche of like gaming and vendors. Everyone is so excited to meet you, and how can we help you, and who do we know?
Yeah, having done so many shows, I will say that's one of the things, it is very true that like everybody I've met has been so helpful about advice. Like, I have had endless conversations with people at booths about like, oh, how do you get your product from one show to another? Like, oh, you ship crates. Oh, you like do this. Oh, you do that. Like, really helpful. Like, oh, if you're, here's, they will, people have said, like, I've asked people and they're like, oh yeah, this is my pin supplier. These are the people that we use for doing these injection molded things. Oh, this person is great to work with. Oh, they're nothing but helpful, nice people, and, across the board. And so we want the we want the booth experience to, like, one of the things that's very intentionally, we're not trying to be kind of, the grim dark thing, or like, like you see a lot of people who are doing, like I said before, nothing against like Wormwood. They do super amazing stuff, but it's like this very, it's very hexagonal. It's very dark wood. It's very premium. It's very quality, but there's not necessarily a sense of fun about it all the time.
Right.
And so we're trying to sort of like inject kind of a little bit of cleverness and fun into it, even if it's not always, clearly I want everything to be quality. I want things built to last and all that, but I also want people to kind of like, not everything has to have a laser engraved dragon on the top of it for a table.
I know.
Right?
Kind of,
there's a certain aesthetic that sort of lands across all D&D stuff.
Yeah.
And I love it. But also at a certain point, it's like, come on, do we have to have everything?
It's a little dark. There's a lot of dragons.
There's a lot of dark wood.
There's a lot of dark wood, a lot dark logos, a lot of dragons. I mean, I think that's why we kind of tried. Our friend designed our Legends of the Tabletop logo.
Oh yeah.
And I thought it was fun, a little vintage, and then we kind of carried that through with, like, we're kind of going through a rebranding, doing a little more 80s themed to go along with everything, just so it's not that standard issue. Not that there's anything wrong with dragons. We love dragons. We love dungeons. We love the darkness, but we wanted it to be a little bit different. So I absolutely appreciate that.
I love the mimic donut.
That's the best. That is the best.
The mimic donut, like, it's so funny because, like, I did the first one, like, just straight up I was like just bored. I was like, oh my gosh. But I was like, oh hey, I've got this like sculpting epoxy. I'll make a mimic. That would be funny. And I made the first one that looked kind of janky and super weird. And I took it to KublaCon. I didn't think anybody was going to buy it. And there was a guy who, like, first day, show opens like Friday morning, walks by at like 9:30, walks by, looks at this thing. He's like, is that a mimic? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, oh my God. He's like super excited about it. He's like, I tell him how much it was. And it was like, it was like, I think like they're not as much as I sell them for now. I think I was like, I don't know. It's like like $20 more than our premium donuts. I was like $180, $190. He was like, okay. He walks away. He's like, oh, well, walks away. Like 30 minutes later, he's back. He's like, I can't stop thinking about it. I have to have it, and bought it. And I was like, oh, well, clearly I did not put the price high enough, and clearly I'm going to have to make more of them. And every time I make them, they're just funny.
I love them.
But I mean, that's like it's the D&D feel, but still like it's fun.
Yeah, exactly. It's fun, and it's like there's in the one shots that we did. One of the one shots, it's called "It's Time to Save the Donuts," and it's about saving a donut shop. And the first thing that happens is you're in a donut shop. The first encounter, you're in a donut shop. You're ordering donuts, and all the donuts come to life and animate and attack you as swarms of donuts. And when I was putting the stat block together for that, if they crit on you, it means that one of them has leapt into your mouth and is trying to choke you in your mouth. So you either have to spend an action chewing it up and swallowing it, to not, or you just have to deal with this thing in your mouth trying to jam itself down your throat, which I just found funny. I love the idea of the idea of a mimic donut is both funny and terrifying.
Yeah, and once you do that to your players, they
won't trust anything.
They don't trust anything ever.
Anything. You're like, oh, I do like back to our conversation before I think listeners got to listen.
Yeah.
We were talking about DMing. I personally don't think people go hard enough on mimics as like just a thing that is around. Like the idea of like, oh, that potion of healing that you've been carrying around for weeks, you go to like drink it and it just like in your moment you're already hurt and all of a sudden it just like wakes up and starts to like attack your face. I mean, it would be the worst as a DM if you just wanted to like absolutely make your players so mad at you. The idea of like,
that's actually amazing.
Food in the right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Oh, it's
one
yeah.
shot.
Now I'm going to be. I will
There's
not trust you anymore, Jonathan.
I think it's a Reddit post that was floating around a few years ago, which was the whole premise of it was that essentially this adventurer was on like his last adventure and salvaged a really fancy chair out of a dungeon and takes it back, and in his retirement he starts a tavern, right? And so he has this really fancy chair that's just been in his tavern for like years and years, like 15 years, right? And he's fully retired, he's got his sword up over the fireplace, and all the thing. And then, but in actuality, the chair is a mimic that he brought back with him and has just been living in his tavern this whole time, just watching everything that's going on. It like eats food scraps off the floor. Like nobody knows that it's not a mimic until bandits come, like the tavern closes for the night and bandits break in and they attack the wife of the tavern keeper and they knock her unconscious, and then they are attacking and nearly killing the tavern keeper, who is this old adventurer, at which point the chair's like, no, I like that guy. The chair goes nuts, kills all the bandits, reassembles itself as a chair.
That is amazing.
And then is back, and then the tavern keeper wakes up and is like, what just happened? I was gonna win, and now all these guys are dead, and it's very clean around this one chair.
No crumbs, no scraps.
He's like, just like, and he just like shoves the chair, make sure the chair is in like the nice place next to the fire and all that, and then goes on about his merry way, probably knowing that it's a mimic,
right?
But it's all kind of told from the perspective of the mimic, which I thought was awesome. I'm like, oh my god, that would be amazing. Like,
I love that.
And the new mimic, the new 2025 rules, or there was somebody did something where there's like, I did a canyon mimic once, where essentially like a whole canyon that the party was trying to get through was essentially one big mimic, which was really fun. It was like a slot canyon, and there was a bunch of stuff flying up above that they couldn't just fly out of it. They had to like go through it, and it was just, you're like, oh yeah, that rock outcropping just turns into a tentacle and tries to grab you. It's very fun to do stuff like that. Mimics are the best, everybody. Yes, you can use them in the best. You just got to be a little. They don't always have to be chests. I know all the minis are them as chests.
They could be donuts. They could be chairs.
They could be donuts. They could
probably
be donuts. They could be chairs.
Yeah.
Donuts would be good. They could be a cart. They could be a cart filled with cabbages.
Yeah.
Get its vengeance.
I love that. So you've been DMing for a long time. How did you? And you said you took a little break in playing.
Yeah. So
games, right?
Yeah. So I started playing. The first time I played D&D, some neighbors came over for like a game night with my parents when I was like 12. I think my brother was like 10, and they brought the red box edition of D&D. And I mean, and so it would have been like 81 or 82, something like that. Or yeah. And like, if you've never played a role-playing game ever, which was everybody at the table, like they opened it up and they looked at it and they were like, none of them could, they had a couple glasses of wine. Nobody could understand anything. They're like, okay, this is not what we're going to do. But they left it at the house, and my brother and I, me especially, huge fantasy nerd, like I just dove into it. I just got obsessed. So I played in, basically all through grade school and high school. I played essentially AD&D, and we also played a ton of like Gamma Wars and Top Secret and Villains and Vigilantes. We played a whole bunch of people. I was big member of the school's D&D club. This is all in New Jersey. And then when I went to college, two things happened. I left for college and I discovered girls. And there were just not a lot of people. I had like one or two friends in college who were also into role-playing games, but not enough to really have like a consistent group, and had a hard time like, just like, I mean, that's the toughest part about gaming, right? Is that you just don't, it's like finding your people. So I just kind of like lost connection with the people who were playing, and I was focused on other stuff. I fenced all through high school, and I was like fencing at college level, and then I was like working on graduating, and art school is intense. You know, there's just a lot of work that you have to put into art school. Like it just takes time to finish a painting, kind of a stuff. So I kind of just, it became less important to me. And then graduated from school. I was dating my wife, just a lot of other stuff happening, and, you know, moved out to the Bay Area where I live now. You know, had a couple of kids, again, same thing. I just wasn't playing that much, doing that much gaming stuff. And then when my son was like 9 or 10, we went to a local game store, and it's like Lords and Labyrinths. It's like a remake of like the first edition rules. We got that because it was kind of kid friendly. I played a little bit with him with that, and I tried to get into 3.5, and for whatever reason, like 3.5, it's just a little too crunchy for me, which is funny. And it really just comes down to like, you know, you kind of like those super crunchy games you have to land on when you're, at least for guys, like you have to land on when you're a young guy and you can like read the books obsessively and like really, really understand them. And I was like, you know, I had a full-time job. I wanted to play, but it was just the timing didn't work out for me to like really understand it. So my son played a bunch of 3.5. He played at a local place called It's Your Move Games in in the Temescal in Oakland. And so he played a bunch of 3.5 with them, but then I was sort of like following it on the side, but I wasn't playing that much myself. And then when 5th edition came out, I had been going back to like comic book conventions and stuff like that. So I was at a comic book convention, and like I picked up the 5th edition Player's Handbook, and because my son wanted to play, and he wanted to play with some of his friends from school. So I started running, first I started running a campaign for my son and like 5 of his friends that we ran all through, from like basically started in grade school and ran all through high school, which was fun. And it was perfect. Same group of kids. It was my son, his best friend, Felix's brother Milo, and then like 2 twins, Parker and Addison.
That is so awesome.
Kid Diego. So so I was playing with them. And then my daughter got interested in it, so I started playing with her and a bunch of her friends from high school. So all of a sudden I was running 2 totally separate games to essentially teens and preteens. And basically was like teaching. I basically would do, this is how I recommend anybody learn to play these games or DM these games, is you have the Player's Handbook, you've got your stuff behind you, make your players explain stuff to you.
Yeah.
You know, just be like, so you're going to do what? What does it say in the book? Tell me, explain that to me. And so and I would read the books, but I would just treat it as, I was just like an arbiter. Super helpful. Yeah. Super helpful. You don't need to know all the rules to be a DM. No. Force your players to do the heavy lifting for you. If they're going to play a druid, you don't need to understand the druid rules. They need to understand the druid rules. You just have to be able to be confident enough to decide what's fair or not fair in your game. Like, that's all you need to do. And then just, frame up a story. So played with them, and that was great. That was like a really kind of low key entry into the whole thing. And that's when at a certain point, like I was doing so much DMing, I was like, I want to play myself. So I started going to Games of Berkeley, which is like my favorite local game store and they had like an open game night where you could just show up and play Adventurers League. So I did some Adventurers League. I did like regular campaigns with them. I ended up DMing, helping them out and doing some DMing on their end. Just got really kind of jumped into it with 2 feet. I'm sure my wife was like, why are you spending all this time doing all this game stuff?
I'm
but
sure her,
you know, and that's
her and I could have some conversations about that, because I think I did that with Jonathan too. Like, what are we doing all this for?
Yeah, I tried. My wife's a year or 2 older than I am, and she's never played any sort of role-playing games or video games, so it's not her jam. And we tried to play one game. We did a little like family game for a little while, and she was just like, this is not my thing. So
yeah, it's tough.
It's tough. Well, and we've talked about it. She writes fantasy novels. She's an artist herself, and she's like, I know the story that I want to tell, you know, which is totally justifiable. Like, if you want to write a novel, you should write a novel. You should not be a DM, right? Like, DMing is a totally is a different experience. So, but it was super kind of, you know, and just kind of got back into it, and then played a little while at Games of Berkeley, got sucked into DMing at Games of Berkeley, and was like, kind of pulled back a little bit from that, and then started up again maybe a year before COVID hit with a different group of people at Games of Berkeley. So I'm in my, for those listeners, even if my voice sounds so youthful, I am in my mid-50s. Started playing with this group of people who were all like in their late 20s, early 30s. They have all turned into like the best group of friends. I played D&D with them. Like, we play weekly or every other week now. Played all through COVID, like twice a week. We were playing like twice a week during COVID, which was amazing. And they're like just great group of, it's super fun to meet a whole different set of people who are younger, different set of interests. You know, it's just been really great to kind of meet and hang out with all those guys.
That's
part
of the beauty of D&D, right? You just sit
for
at a
sure.
table and you just become fast friends immediately.
Well,
Bonding over
exactly.
a game.
And you know, and I do want to say, like, you know, like I do a podcast with another friend of mine who's my age called The Dadvantage. We're on a little bit of a hiatus right now, but we talk about gaming and gaming with our kids and stuff like that. But one of the things that, you know, we've talked about is like, you know, if you're playing with a group of people and you're not into how, like, the vibe of that table, like, pick up and move to another table. And that's kind of what happened with me, where I got kind of sucked into, there were just, you know, some of the players I was playing with either as a DM or as like fellow players at Games of Berkeley, that initial set of group, I just kind of got tracked in with a bunch of people who are very passive players, which is not how I play at all. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm very much interested in people who, like, I want to make very active choices. I want to move the story in a direction. It may not be the direction the DM's like hoping for, but I want things to like move along, right? Yeah. I'm not there to like, you know, I'm there to role play. I'm there to do that stuff, but I'm also there to like make active choices. Mm-hmm. And so I just don't like playing with people who are like waiting for the DM to tell them a story. Like, that's not my jam. So when I stopped, it was like, I was like, I really did need to take a break for my marriage's sake. But I also, you know, but also it was like, I just need to like reset with, I don't want to like hurt the people I'm talking about, like perfectly nice people, but just I wasn't gelling with, I just needed to pause. Like, I was like, I did not have the energy to carry every session the way that I was. So I was like, okay, I'm going to just like step back a little bit and then go on to the next thing. And, I don't know. It was, it's just, you know, and so have the group that I'm with now, like, we just have like a really good time. Like, I'm DMing one campaign that I started with them now that has been going on for like 3 or 4 years. And then there's one of the other people is a regular DM, and they have a different campaign. And so we just trade off with like slightly different groups of people.
That's really cool.
How many players have you killed?
Let's get down to the brass tacks, Andy.
That is a great question. How many players have I killed? You know, I really don't think I've killed like actual players. I've killed no one. No one can pin a murder charge on me for like, have I actually killed a person? No. And how many player characters have I killed? Yeah. Player characters like dead. I really have not killed that many. Okay. I don't. I'm way more interested in I want my players to be the heroes of the story,
Mm-hmm.
but I want them to work for it, right? So my preference in a fight is that, if I've got 6 players at the table and they're fighting the big bad at the end of the campaign, I want them to just be like, not really know, like I want them to kind of like I want there to be lots of stuff going on, big explosive actions, but I want them to be able to be heroic and to feel like they're under threat, right? So the campaign that I'm running, my homebrew setting is called the Shattered Chasm, and it's essentially the Grand Canyon. It's the terrain of the Grand Canyon, but the deeper you get into the canyon, there's essentially been like a planar there's like some sort of apocalyptic thing that actually formed the canyon. So now there's all this like planar stuff that happens. And so and there are all these like planar minerals around, shattered metals, right? So the way the setting works is there are 3 different big bads. There was a lich, there's a big dragon, and then there's there's an elder brain. And the 3 of them are all trying to, those 3 entities through different mechanisms are trying to control the Shattered Chasm in order to they all have slightly different goals. So for, and the way I set it up initially was they didn't have to necessarily, there wasn't like an order. They could have fought the dragon first. They could have gone after the elder brain first. They could have gone after the lich first, whatever. It didn't matter. But, so they ended up going after the lich. So the lich is living on at the top of this big spire in the middle of the Grand Canyon. Initially had an undead rock that was flying around that was like, he would just snatch up shipments of these shattered metals and bring them back to him because he's trying to build some great big mechanism. So this is like, you talk about like random encounters. I had a random encounter in this town. They're in this like Western themed town. They have like some prospector shows up and he's got a big nugget of this shattered mithril, which is the most valuable of the metals. And he wants to, he gets like, basically the lich controlled the bank in town, right? This is because everything's capitalism, right? Your enemy's always capitalism.
Always.
The lich controls the bank. The bank is basically the only place where he can sell this metal. They're not going to give him a good offer.
Right.
My party, and this is a random encounter, right? So this guy shows up. They could have done nothing. I would have killed the prospector in the street. They would have taken the mithril and they wouldn't have had to do anything. They intervene. They rescue this guy. They say, okay, for like 20% of the value of this thing, we will escort you to the edge of the map, essentially. And they go, right? And so I'm like, okay, great. Well, I've already established in my head canon that there's this giant rock that the lich will send out to like snatch up stuff that has high value. Like he's after mithril especially, right? So they start running. They're like, da, 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 da. I have this undead rock. I'm like, oh, well, what would an undead rock with a lich underneath it? What would he do? I was like, oh, he just has like dozens of zombies. So I like I carpet bombed them with zombies from like, so I just dropped like, and they're like 5th level characters. I'm just like, I drop a bunch of zombies on them from a height, and like, again, you talk about like trying to kill your players. I wasn't trying to kill them. I had like intent, I gave them a chance, but like I could have rolled better and I would have just like, absolutely splatted all of them. So they have all these zombies come. Now they have a grave cleric. She starts turning people. They end up killing. Yeah. So, and at this point, the lich doesn't know who they are, doesn't care who they are. They're just a bunch of adventurers. They get very lucky. They kill this rock, right? Well, now they've killed the lich's pet and like his main servitor. So he's kind of pissed, right? They keep running. He's kind of chasing them. Like, he's just like, okay, fine. He's just like, you did this. I'm aware of you. So it just turned into this thing where they kept sort of unintentionally interfering with his plans. Because I just had like a ticker, and at a certain point they were like, oh my God, well, we just have to go kill this guy or else he's going to kill us. Right. So they're like, okay, well, we got to figure out where his phylactery is. So they figure out they had made a deal. They had like, I don't know. It's like I could go into the whole thing. They had made a deal with a Yugoloth or something like that. One of the fox the fox demon guys who were like super knowledgeable. They'd made a deal with him. He told them where the phylactery was. They went and found the phylactery. They destroyed the phylactery. And as soon as that happened, the Lich goes from like, oh, you guys, I'm aware of you guys, to like, oh, yeah, I'm going to kill you, right? And then it's like, and I had this, like,
and none of this was your original plan, right? None of it.
Well, it was, I mean, like, my thing about it is like, from a, like, you just try to think of motivations, right? I had a very clear idea of the Lich. What was the Lich trying to do? The Lich is essentially a scientist who is very interested in the shattering. When that happened, it created this thing through the whole region where essentially there's all these like micro breaks and all these planar breaks all over the place. It essentially like stitched together all the planes into this one place. So he is, as a scientist, why did he become a Lich? He became a Lich because he had this vision of like, oh, somehow I can harness all this, but I'm not going to live long enough to do that, to build this great mechanism, unless I become a Lich. So he becomes a Lich in order to collect enough shattered mithril in order to create a device that will allow him to essentially step through to any plane, anywhere, at any time that he can control, right? Now, in order for that thing to work, it's going to basically kill everybody within 100 miles, right? Like, that's what's going to power the creation of this. So they kind of decipher that some of this, they find an area where he did like an early experiment. They meet some people. And so they kind of like stumble across this stuff, and they kind of like patch all this together and like, oh, we really need to kill this guy or else he's gonna, now on the same hand, the Lich, who like under other circumstances is probably like, oh, it's going to take me another 100 years to finish this thing. He's just working patiently away. He's living forever. He doesn't care. He's got the bank is feeding him the materials he needs as often as he likes. It gives him a way to kind of control everything and see what's going on. And he's sort of like this figure in the, he's got a bunch of people out in front of him to be his. People don't really know he exists, right? He's just this sort of the mysterious figure. Well, they figure it out. They do the phylactery, and then he's like, oh, well, I replaced what did I do? I said, oh, he's going to replace the rock, but he doesn't have a rock available to just replace it with another rock. So he captures 2 Behir, he stitches them together, he turns them into a Behemoth, and it just turns into this like crazy undead thing that will just follow they're like, and I'm like, it's just going to, he just tells you way
too many ideas right now.
Dude, the stat block on this thing was nuts, where I was like, oh, it's going to have like death ray lightning. Instead of lightning bolts, it's going to shoot like, necrotic damage rays, but like it's got 2 heads. So if it brings the 2 heads together and they line up on somebody, like then it's going to be like a necrotic, you cross the lasers and it's going to turn into like this necrotic beam. So it's just like, I can talk about Shattered Chasm for a long time, but but it really was more about like, what is the motivation of the villain, and does the villain actually care about the party? Villain did not care about the party until the party had done enough to irritate him, where he was like, oh, I need to take care of you. And it wasn't, and he still wasn't even like, oh, I'm all in on it, until they took care of his phylactery. And once he did that, he was like, oh wait, no, you are a threat. So now they have to like, so then they're on I told him, you guys are on a timer, right? You have to basically break into where he's at as soon as you can, because once he finishes this thing, you're done, right? So then once they're on a timer, this is like a high level or mid-tier level thing when you're a DM. It's like, you're really just trying to like you want to give the party resources enough to win, but you also want to make it feel like a threat. So in order to do that, you have to like drain resources. So I just set it up. Their path to get to him was either continue to fight this Behemoth, which even when they kill it, like it had to be killed on hallowed ground, which they never figured out. So like you kill it. So like, let's say you killed it with fire damage. Well, the next time you face it, it's going to be immune to the thing that you killed it with before, and you have to kill it on hallowed ground, or else 24 hours later, it's just going to reconstitute itself and keep coming. So they killed it. They escaped. They ended up in like underground in the chasm, trying to like creeping along through that stuff. They had a whole bunch of adventures there, and then they had like, the timer really was, you you started underneath the chasm or underneath the spire, and they had to like go through like 6 levels of the spire, but they basically just had to like, they couldn't take anything more than a short rest in that. And I will say, like, as a rules thing, like when you set up a circumstance like that, you can really like mess with your party, because you can be like,
That's
hey,
stressful.
you know what, you're only allowed 1 short rest between long rests, right? You can't just like take a short rest every level. It's like, you got to, and they knew how far they had to, I told them how far they had to go. They had done some scouting. And then, so then they had this big,
fly on your table, Andy. When can we fly on your table?
We'll figure something out. I would be happy to, we can run a one shot.
One shot.
We can do a one shot.
Man.
No, this Shattered Chasm was like super, like the 2 things the just totally random advice stuff. Start with geography. When you think about if you're making a homebrew setting, start with geography, because geography can determine culture, and it can, and it just kind of defines how like communities relate to each other. And then once you have the communities, then decide, like, give everybody who's in a circumstance, they should have a motivation, right? Just like all of us do, right? So there are very few people in the world who are passive, right? So you want,
especially if you want
your big bads to have
in New Jersey.
Yeah, exactly. You want your big bads to have a goal, and they should be actively working towards that goal, and you should know how they're going to react when somebody interferes with that or helps them with that, right? You know, so at one point this will be the last I talk about this particular arc. In the last battle, they had gone to the dragon earlier on the behalf of another group of dwarves who were also in there, but they had made an alliance. They basically made an alliance with this at the time like adult red dragon, who was also living in the chasm, and has been kind of warring with the Lich off and on for like 100 years, right? They made an alliance with him. They were like, hey, if we end up attacking him, we will tell you, and you come help us in the attack, right? So in that final battle, the Behemoth shows up again, but then the dragon is fighting the Behemoth. So at one point in the battle, they're in this big room. There's this big shattered mithril mechanism that's starting to work, and they're trying to like prevent it. They have to like stop the ritual from it working. Like one of the guys ran up to the Lich. The Lich power word stunned him. He spent like 2/3 of the combat like stunned at the Lich's feet, trying to get out of it. You know, they have another big heavy hitter guy who comes running up, and he's like, I'm gonna like power word kill that guy. Like, I mean, it just like, you know, they have an artificer who rides around on a motorcycle. At one point, he's like ripping around doing like donuts around this mechanism, trying to like figure out how he can drive across, and like he ended up like running over the Lich at one point. You know, like there was like a cleric who's like trying to keep the Lich up and revitalize him. He like kills that guy. I mean, it's like crazy. But at one point, like the side of the thing gets opened up. The Behemoth shows up, and the dragon shows up. Dragon doesn't care if he kills the party or not. He wants to kill everybody. He blasts the whole room with like fireball in the middle of everything else going on.
This is incredible.
I had like, a bunch of triggered stuff going on, and we did that particular fight. We all did in person. We had minis for everybody. It was super fun.
I was going to ask you to do it in person.
But like again, like nobody died in that fight, but I think everybody would say like they earned their victory in that fight. And like I like
that's so important as a player.
And it's like I fudged. I will say like I fudged the hit points on the Lich. I was using the old stat block. If I were using the new stat block, I probably would have to like rejigger the fight a little bit, because it would have been the 2025 rules for Liches are crazy. But like I like on the fly, I think I like added like 50 hit points or something like that, just because it was like it was like I wanted it to get to a certain, like it didn't feel like there was enough tension in the fight. It was like really kind of like what I was after. But yeah, I mean, and so they killed all that. Then the dragon's like, okay, well, you guys, you helped me, so I'm not going to kill you right now, but you need to leave. Yeah, I'm not going to kill you right this second, but this spire is mine now, so don't think that you can take anything. So they had to like basically grab as much. They didn't get to keep the spire. They grabbed kind of as much loot as they could, and then they teleported. My son was playing Trusty Beak, who was this sort of like helpful, not so helpful. We talked about the Mimic Canyon. He showed up in the Mimic Canyon as he was an Aarakocra scout, and so he was like trying. One of the players has a wolf as a companion, and every time my son was playing, the Aarakocra was sort of styled after like a vulture, so he really liked bones. So he like the Chet got knocked down and was unconscious, so my son was trying to steal the companion's dog while it was dead, so that they couldn't raise it back up. So, and then it showed up in another fight earlier on where he healed somebody, but he also like stole, like they had a Cloak of the Mountebank that they really liked that was driving me crazy. So my son, the cleric got knocked unconscious, so my son gave them a healing potion but stole the cloak. So then when they rescued him, he was in the spire, in like the dungeon of the spire, so they rescued him, and they're like, and they hate this freaking Aarakocra. They like hate him, but they couldn't kill him because he had all this information about the spire and could tell them like where they needed to go in the spire. So they're like, God damn it, so you're going to come along. And he didn't have the cloak, and they get the cloak back, and the cloak now has been damaged but repaired, so now it just casts teleport, but it's like with a high degree of potential failure.
Some patches
so
on it.
they're absolutely it's got like big gold thread through it,
poorly stitched.
So they get like absolutely wiped out. They're pretty beat up after this fight. They know the dragon is going to give them a hard time, so they gather everybody up, they teleport, they roll about as bad as you can on the teleportation, nearly kill themselves like landing in the mountains outside of where they're at. I was like, that would have been the worst possible ending, is like, oh yeah,
after all of that,
after all that, you teleport off a cliff in the middle of nowhere and you're stuck. So
the fall damage is going to kill you.
Oh my goodness.
So that's like that, but that campaign's been running, and I've been thinking about that setting I've got an Obsidian file that's bonkers. It's just every time I do a session, I make a little notes for it. And
Jonathan has we have two Jonathans, this one and then we have another one.
Yes.
And they have been writing for years in this world of Novamir that we do for a lot of our one-shots. Years, like files on files on files of NPCs and all different characters, and it's incredible. I mean, Andy, you're you come from a background of art, and your wife's a writer, so like that part of your brain can just go on forever and just create and create and create.
Yeah, it's very funny because it's like and as I've gotten like deeper into this hobby, sorry about that. As I've gotten deeper into the hobby, I think that's one of the things I really like, is it just is this playground for you to kind of like
creativity,
create this thing, and then within that thing, like I really like making. I don't want to make a whole world, right? I'm not interested in making Faerun. But like this, but I also like the idea of, I think a lot of times we forget how big even like a region is. Like we went on the reason I kind of got really interested in the Grand Canyon and that terrain was like, I was like, oh, like in kind of pre-car era stuff, like,
how long
100 miles, like, or like you could like literally, like you can, it takes a long time to get anywhere. And I was like, I could make, like, instead of making like a whole world and having to draw like a whole continent's map, what if I just make kind of like this amorphous edged thing that is the canyon, right? And then that becomes a thing that you can kind of like drop into a campaign, like you can drop that region. There's nothing that says that you can't like put the Shattered Chasm into Faerun or put it into some other place, because it's not trying to be the whole thing. It's just trying to be this region that it could be. And it's you just keep digging into it and adding detail and all the rest of that. So
I love it.
Yeah, I love world building, even if it's 90% of it stays with me. It's just that on-demand stuff that someone says, well, what's this? I'm like, don't worry about it, because I got it. I made it.
See, it's very fun. So like Michael, my co-host with Advantage, we laugh because we have slightly different styles of play. Like he's very much like he does a lot of prep. Like he'll like, if he knows a big set piece battle is coming up, he'll like run it a couple of times to balance it. I'm much more of, I go the other way where I'm like, I want a framework, right? Like I want to understand, like I said, I want to understand the motivations. I'll make up a lot of the stuff in between, but like if I know the motivations, then I know how most characters are going to act. And I'll do that. But yeah, sometimes there's just so much detail to try to hold in your head at any given moment. It's like, I just don't know that it's, and also I think like, I don't know, I'm sure you've run into this, like you'll prep one thing and then your party will go in a different direction. And then you have to just sort of take that thing and like, that thing is like, oh, what I did was I actually prepped the next encounter. I know they went right, but that thing that I spent that time prepping, that's going to show up down the road somewhere.
Absolutely. Right? I'll use it later.
No effort is wasted. Yeah, for sure.
Oh my goodness.
Sure. But yeah, so yeah, I suppose I should talk probably a little bit more about.
Yeah, I was going to say before we wrap up, because we could just chat forever and nerd out about games and D&D. But before we wrap up, let's talk about your Kickstarter. That today's June 1, so it's here. It's out.
It launched on the 31st. It's going to end at the end of June. Basically, it's a take that style card game. So you're baking a dish by combining these 3 different cards: wet stuff, dry stuff, and tasty bits. You discard that. When you discard that set of cards, it generates splat, that could be 0 or it could be up to 4. And you choose another player at the table and you give them that number, right? So if you draw a 3, I say, Sarah, you're getting a 3. Sarah says, oh my gosh, once Sarah or me or Jonathan has 8, you're out of the game. And the goal is to be the last baker standing. And then there's a whole host of action cards that we call Cinemonsters that let you do stuff like, like I could throw the splat at Sarah and Sarah could say, oh, wait, I've got a donut dwarf. I'm going to throw that down. That means that Andy, have to choose another target. Sorry, Jonathan, you've got 3 splat now. Right. And if Jonathan has a donut dwarf and he says, no, you got to pick somebody else, then I have just, I can't pick anybody else because I can't throw it at myself. So, you get to do that. You can, there's the Eclairvoyant. It's all puns and alliteration, right? There's the Eclairvoyant. She lets you, you get to look at the next 4 cards on the deck, choose one and reorder them however you want. So I could know that the next card, what the next card Jonathan's going to draw, and depending on what he does, I might be able to you can kind of force stuff into people's hands, which is kind of fun. You can swap hands with people. You can steal cards from people.
Nice.
You can force everybody to discard a certain ingredient. You can force everybody to, God, what else? Oh my gosh. There's the janitor, which lets you clean up your splat, so that you kind of do that. And then basically the game ends when there's one person left or you run out of splat cards. And it plays between 20 to 40 minutes, depending on the number of players, up to 6 players. Once you know the rules, it's very quick to pick up, but once you kind of get it, it plays pretty fast, and it's great for a group of friends who want to give each other a hard time. It's kind of like Exploding Kittens and some of those other take that style games, where you're just trying to push people off the table. My son started it in his senior year of high school as his senior project, and we've been working on it off and on since then. So that was 3 or 4 years ago. Done a ton of play testing on it. Like I said before, my daughter Ollie did all the artwork. So it's definitely been a family affair. We were just I think we kind of were okay, we put so much effort into this, we just have to launch it. So we, we kind of figured out the last little bits, did some last little design and polish on it. We're okay, we're just putting it out in the world. We'll see how it goes. But so
I was excited when you did those one shots, and then you said you're coming out with a game, and I was like, what?
Yeah. So so you talk about DodecaDonuts, the brand. Basically, it's kind of whatever we want to do, so long as it's food themed. We figure we've got permission.
I love it.
Food and fantasy. We're fantasy food fight, definitely in the lane of what we're doing. Fantasy food and
it's right on brand.
Fighting. Yes.
Right on
so
brand.
the goal is, depending on how this goes, we've got ideas for like expansion action cards and other stuff so that it would play with larger number of people, or you'd have different other action cards. And like we said, it's all kind of fun stuff. And then like, so the Kickstarter, there's some early bird stuff, but in general, like the games it's $20, which we expect the retail price to be like closer to 25. And our hope is to then do these expansions, which would be just single decks that would fit into the box that comes with this. So
love a good expansion pack.
Yes. And yeah, I think that's where we're at, and then we've got, what did we do? We were trying to think of like really silly but fun stretch goals. So one of the stretch goals is a spoon that just says stirring up trouble. We're going to laser engrave a bunch of spoons. Nice. And then we'll put that on as an add-on. And then the other one, which is further out, would be to do like chefs wear Crocs all the time.
Yeah.
So we'll probably we'll turn a bunch of we're going to turn a bunch of these guys into little PVC charms for your Crocs.
That's cool.
So you'll be able to have the Eclairvoyant or the Licorice Lich or the Donut Dwarf as like a head that you can put on your Croc to decorate your footwear.
I love it.
Why? I don't know, but it's
fun.
pretty funny. And because it's fun.
It's
exactly.
fun.
It's all about, it's the stuff we want to do the stuff that's fun.
Yeah.
And that's why we all play D&D and fantasy games, because it's not real life and we can escape and enjoy it and have fun, right?
Yes. There's we could have a whole nother hour-long conversation, maybe back to our podcast, Why I Hate Everybody.
I'll have you on that podcast then.
Yeah, when that podcast exists, we can talk. I can go all into that. But what I do think is that even when things are, I think people should seek moments of joy, and I think that's one of the things that we're trying to provide is just clever, fun things that when you drop a dice into a coffee cup, or you crack your donut open to see your dice, or you play a silly card game, that you have kind of a little moment of reprieve. I think that's really what DodecaDonuts is trying to do, or you have a sticker that says no Nazis at the table.
Exactly. It's all, even when it's serious, it's funny.
Even when it's serious, it should be funny. And that's, yes. And even when it's serious, that doesn't mean that it can't be clever or something else.
Witty. Yeah. Well, before we wrap up, we do a few rapid fire questions if you'd like to partake. Nothing too serious.
And I'll try very hard not to give long-winded responses.
Okay. All right. So if you had one genre of music to listen to forever, what would it be?
One genre or one band?
Let's do a band. Let's do a band.
Well, if there was one, the genre would probably just be like alt, like 90s alt rock.
Okay.
And the band would be They Might Be Giants, because they are the world's greatest band, and their music is so varied. And I'd make my wife insane because I listen to all their music anyway. So yeah, I could listen to They Might Be Giants nonstop for days.
So you're a Critical Role fan, as are we, as Jonathan. That's how we kind of started our obsession here.
As guess what a lot of people did. Yeah. They did a lot for the hobby.
Like who else, right? Yeah. So what is your favorite campaign?
Ooh, that's a great question. My favorite campaign, honestly, is probably campaign 2.
Yes, sir.
There's just a lot of.
Jonathan agrees with that answer.
It's I mean, I really. Here's what I'll say. The end of campaign 1 was awesome, and I loved, kind of from the. No spoilers, everybody. Scanlan has this amazing turn, probably 2/3 of the way through campaign 1, where he flips out on everybody. It's pretty well known, where he talks about them not knowing anything about his character and that he's just comic relief. Like as a role-playing moment, unbelievable. So probably from that point on in campaign 1, I really liked campaign 1. That they ended it and they did some high-level play that was just, I think, really, really fun to watch. Campaign 2, loved the start, loved probably the first 2/3 of it, just really, really strong. I think the campaign 3 suffered from sort of encountering COVID, but I like the characters in campaign 2, Jester and Ford and all those things. There was just a lot to love Ford there. Puff. The whole, like, yeah, oh my God. And like the accent shift, like that choice of like going from this like oh no guys, I've just been like, I don't know enough about myself. I've been playing this character to all of you the whole time. Yeah. Amazing choice. And then all the stuff with is Umberly? No, not Umberly. What's the name of his patron with the eyes, the tentacles? You guys, I should know this. I know exactly. So like all the stuff with Ford and his patron and Jester and her mom and kind of like, there's a lot to Laura Bailey's characterization of Jester, who is this like very fun, happy person. And then you get into it and you're like clearly just, there's a lot of trauma back there that's just absolutely masked by this like super happy face, which is like, and there's just some like crazy interactions where like the whole thing with Tusk Love and the book with Tusk Love. And then like there's that whole conversation where Bo is like asking her like, and she's like, oh yeah, isn't romance like the romance novels? It's like either romance novels or what I saw in my mom's brothel. And you're just like, what is going on inside?
Such a great character.
But yeah, there's and like the whole, I mean, there's just so much, like, I mean, Matt really is like an amazing world builder. Like I said, like I think of all the campaigns, I think that one was the strongest. I really enjoyed, there's elements of campaign 3 that I also really enjoyed. I felt like the characters, they were all like really pushing hard to make like the most unique characters. And I think maybe the campaign suffered a little bit from that. I don't know. It's like, it's such a hard balance to know, like they're, as a DM, like I absolutely see why they are where they are in terms of like their campaign choices and everything. They're all actors. They're all like amazing. They really know the game really well, and they're trying to like entertain themselves and their friends, right? So they don't want to just repeat the same notes. I do think sometimes that like, I feel like, I think one of the things that they can, because it is just an open-ended campaign, like they just can go like way off the rails and kind of end up in like some really like places that are just like super wide turns that you're like, from like watching a show perspective, you're like, oh, I probably would have edited that whole like thing out from like them getting to their end goal. But I don't know.
That's the magic of
it's
Matt
super
Mercer
fun
too.
I mean, yeah. And I would also honestly say, if we're like including other, I think EXU, the Calamity stuff that Brennan Lee Mulligan ran, that like shorter arc, that is like, that's right up there. Like that is like just like a little encapsulated story, like just really, 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 really.
Brendan Lee Mulligan's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Last. I have 2 questions here. I'm trying to figure out which one I want to do. Okay. So you've traveled to a lot of cities doing all of these events, all these gaming cons. And you obviously love food. You have connections with donuts, foods, coffee. What is your favorite city that you've traveled to for one of these cons, in terms of food? And is there like a go-to thing you have when you go to that city? Like, I'm going here again, I have to get that pizza, I have to get that dessert. Do you have something?
Okay. So this is no shade on any of the other cities that we've been to.
No shade.
No shade. We go to Seattle a lot, right? So we've been to Seattle for for a couple of PAXs. We've been to Seattle for, we went for ECC. We've been there for ECC twice. We were there for SakuraCon. There is up Pine Street, there is a ramen place, which I'm forgetting their name, that is really, really good. There's also like the Dough Zone. There's a bunch of really good restaurants within like walking distance of the convention center. It's a little goofy because like when you work a table from like 10 to 7, like you really don't want to interact with anybody after you're done with that. Like 8 or 9 hours of like 100% real, totally fake donuts, sugar and gluten free, keto friendly, like you're just on for a long time. So
just put your face in a bowl of ramen.
Yeah, like I just want to like sit and like just eat something. There's also a really good like Persian place up there in that neighborhood too. So yeah, we had a bunch of really good meals in that sort of neighborhood just across the freeway from the convention center on
Seattle.
On Pine. I'm pretty sure it's on Pine. It's really good. There's also a really good pierogi place, pierogi, which is right outside, and some good coffee. But Philadelphia has the food hall.
Yeah.
But
Feniel,
which is really which is the Market Hall or whatever they call it.
Market Hall, yeah. Feniel's in Boston.
Yeah, which is so it's pretty good. There's some, and like you kind of have to get what's like. We were just in Boston for PAX East. We had some really good. We went to Moxie's and had some really good clam chowder. Like just kind of, so classic, it's you kind of like I really do try to get what's local as much as we can.
Best way to do it,
if possible. But like God, last year we were in Madison, Wisconsin for Gamehole Con, and they had a bunch of food trucks because there was just not much to eat around the convention hall, and some of the food trucks were great.
Food trucks are where it's at. I mean, what?
Trucks are, it's like there's.
Let's say, Andy, you did the food truck. It's been decided on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. Apparently, I have to make a food truck. I'm gonna have to figure out how to do a food truck display.
Well, I just want to say,
insane.
We can do it. We can. 2020.
We can do it.
2026. We'll
2026.
Let's do it.
That'll be the next Kickstarter. Is like help everybody fund my food truck, my fake food truck, my fake food truck.
Count Legends of the Tabletop in. We'll be your first contributor.
That'll be insane.
Andy, thank you so much for coming.
Oh no, thanks for having me. I really enjoy this.
A lot of fun, and check out the Kickstarter. Ends the end of June. Go check it out. Go back Andy's Kickstarter. Go buy some of these donuts, a dice bag, stickers, T-shirts, whatever he has. Support DodecaDonuts. They're friends of the Legends of the Tabletop, and we've enjoyed always seeing them at conventions and interacting with them. So again, Andy, thank you so very much.
No, thank you guys.
I appreciate it. And a little plug here for our friends also at Eldridge Foundry, to make sure you go check out eldridge-foundry.com. They do some full color minis. You could use code CHEESEBAGS15 and get 15% off your order at eldridge-foundry.com. Andy, thank you so much again. This is the Legends of the Tabletop Parking Lot Podcast, and we'll talk to you soon, Andy.
Okay.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you again.
Awesome.
Yes, next con with a food truck.
With a food truck.